whether it be athletes or, soldiers, servants, child of God, things like that. Tonight we're going to be talking about strangers and pilgrims. The passage that it has there, the first verse on that lesson, is Hebrews 11:13. It says, "These all died in faith, not having received the promises, but having seen them afar off, were assured of them, embraced them, and confessed them, that they were strangers and pilgrims on the earth." Obviously, like most of the teachers, I want to encourage any type of comments, or if you have questions, I may not know the answer to them, but I can try to find them out. But if I don't see your hand raised, Aaron, did you have something? No. Oh, you had your hand raised. Just yell out my name and make your comment, because I don't want to miss anybody. So the first thing that it talks about in this class, or in this lesson, it says becoming a disciple of Christ is very exciting. And it goes on to talk about who our new master is, that being Christ. What was interesting when I was doing this is when I just looked at the title before I even saw the class, I thought about strangers and pilgrim and what I thought those meant to me. And it's interesting that it's exactly what the author pulls out when it says, just in the general sense of what a stranger is and what a pilgrim is. It says a stranger is someone you don't know, and a pilgrim is somebody that came over on the Mayflower. And that is oftentimes, when I think of pilgrim, I think of that time, and Thanksgiving and things like that with the buckle hat and things like that. But the book goes into more, or the lesson goes into a little bit more. It says, it defines, maybe I can just click through those, because we are not on servant. Maybe. There we go. Okay. So stranger, translated from the Greek word xenos, which literally means a foreigner. And then pilgrim comes from, it says, thus a stranger is one who is out of his own country, someone who is in a foreign land. And then pilgrim, translated from the Greek word parademios, parapidemos, you get the drift, which refers to a resident foreigner, one who lives among a people who are not his own. This person does not have the rights of a citizen, nor is he seeking a permanent residence. Well, obviously this class is not about details regarding citizenship in the United States or any other country. So the purpose of this is how we as disciples of Christ are strangers and pilgrims. If you've ever traveled internationally, or I guess more common is internationally, but even some places in the United States, have you felt like a stranger in those places? And why? What made you feel like a stranger? Yeah.
It was the cultures.
The cultures?
That I had encountered.
Okay.
You didn't fit.
Okay. You didn't fit? Okay. Anybody else? The language? Okay. What else?
The religious beliefs.
Okay. There's all kinds of factors that make us feel like a stranger when we go someplace, especially, when you're talking about international, in which the language is different, the culture is different, the way that the family is structured, the way that maybe they do things on a daily basis, all of those things. There's places in the United States that, coming from Oklahoma, you can go to, whether it be in the Northeast or even the Northwest, or certain places that you feel like a stranger because of the way that people are. And what I've always found interesting is that when you are in those places and you kind of feel like a fish out of water because maybe you don't understand what's being said, maybe you don't really fully understand how they do what they do, or why they do what they do, there is this desire at times, and most of the time, we travel to these places and it's on vacation. It's not Sometimes it's permanent, whether you're in the military or a job or something like that. But oftentimes it's on vacation, and so you're trying to take, advantage of it, and it's not a matter of you living there. But if you have been there for an extended period of time, wherever it is, that you don't feel maybe like everyone is kind of like you, what do you often crave? Home. It's something where you want that comfort of being back to where you kind of know what's going on. And it can be something as simple as the way that the traffic is in this place that you're going, or something like the food that you're eating. It can be something very minor that makes you want to go back home. And when you get back home, oftentimes you're a lot more comfortable. You're kind of back in your groove. You're kind of back to where you understand the way things are, and you kind of get back in that groove. But the point of this lesson is to express that mindset of being a stranger, to a certain degree, is the way that we should feel in this world. And the home that we should look for isn't anything physical, but that heavenly home. The difference between it is we've never been to heaven. We know where our home is here, and we're comfortable with that. But we've been told what heaven's going to be like. And just like the example, I guess we'll get to it a little in a minute, of Abraham, he hadn't seen the land that he was going to, but he was promised. And so, as we live our life, as strangers and pilgrims in this world, our goal is to get home. So, the other thing that maybe you've experienced at one time or another when you're traveling is if you have ever went to a place in which it was very different, maybe from where you live, where you're from, and you go and you visit a congregation, or you go and you meet brethren in that place, and automatically you have this camaraderie, this common shared belief with these people that you don't know from Adam. But yet you have this understanding that you almost feel more comfortable being around them. Because wherever they may live, however the culture is around it, when you go and you are able to meet with other brothers and sisters in Christ, there is a certain degree of comfort that you experience. And I think that if anybody has done that, you know what I'm talking about. Because I know that there are times where, that there's a relief that happens when you can be with people that are like you. And what we should share more than anything else is that common hope, that common faith in Christ, and our goal to get to heaven. It talks about the first example, really, that we have of someone being a stranger in a strange land is the story of Abraham and Sarah. In Genesis chapter 12 and verse 1 is where the Lord told Abram to, in so many words, pack up your things, leave your father, leave your household or your land, and go into this place that I'm going to show you. And he makes these promises to him about what that's going to be. And Abram at the time, does that. He packs up his belongings and he heads to this land that he doesn't know. It says, and I think this is question 3, how does Abraham view his relationship with the citizens of Canaan? And if somebody will turn to Genesis chapter 23 and verse 4 and read that when you get there.
I am a foreigner and a visitor among you. Give me property for a burial place among you, that I may bury my dead out of my sight.
Okay. It says in the book, he realized he was not one of them, and he never tried to become one of them. It goes on and it says, and I'm on the second page of this lesson, the Bible calls us disciples to have the same attitude towards our relationship with this world. We are out of our own country in this world. We are not citizens. We are seeking a permanent place to call our own, nor are we looking to fit in with those around us. We are passing through, seeking a homeland after this is over. So when, let's say that in this country, and I'm not saying that you know the exact details of someone's citizenship or whether or not they're actually, they're here on a visa or things like that. What are some characteristics you can tell of somebody that you would consider to be a stranger in this land? It kind of goes to what we were talking about in others, but
we've seen neighborhoods develop. Little Italy or Polish community or Chinatown where you can surround yourself by people that speak your language and that know your culture and where you feel at least somewhat at home. And it seems like that's something, that clustering of common people seems to occur in a lot of cities.
yeah, that's a good point. And I think that that's interesting that sometimes people, and I understand the reasons why certain people may come to the United States. And this isn't a political discussion at all about anything along those lines, but they come here and oftentimes they like to establish those things that make them comfortable, those things of home. And so they develop these places. And oftentimes it's kind of just because so many people congregate in this area, and that's the way it becomes. The food that they enjoy, the food that they know how to make because it's their family has always made these things, and so restaurants open with these types of things, and religious places, congregations, or different things that are much like where they came from. But we can usually identify someone who maybe isn't necessarily a United States-born citizen because of these attributes that we see when we travel ourselves. Those things that the things that they wear maybe that are cultural, or the way that they talk, certain characteristics of their family and things like that. But there are certain attributes that people have that stand out. And the reason I even bring this up, why do you think I'm bringing this up? In the sense of what we are supposed to be as Christians. We're supposed to stand out to a certain degree. We're supposed to be different. Now, there are people that, and I can't judge their heart. I don't know, maybe the reason why some do this. But I think that there are people that maybe take the idea of being different to a certain degree to where that is the emphasis of what they're trying to show. Is that they're different, but not for the reason of being obedient to Christ. You see some characteristics, and I think Jeremiah has talked about this in a lesson before, but that the idea of looking or appearing in some way in the way that you carry yourself or the way that you show yourselves to others, in which you are trying to get attention based on maybe your physical features. People that try to get rid of everything they own and live in a certain degree of poverty to show that the materialism is not what this life is about. Yes, that's a true point, but there's also passages that talk about us, being stewards and taking care of those things. Yeah.
I think a big part of striking that balance you're talking about is the giant differences are differences in law. What we're amenable to, what we're going to submit to, and that would look different in the physical aspect, as if you break the law as a foreigner in American soil, you're going to be prosecuted. It might have some differences, whatever. But here we have heavenly law, and so the government allows for promiscuity and alcohol and all those other kind of things, legalizing marijuana now and stuff. And the reason why we don't do it is because of the dictates of heaven. And so if you're just being different as a byproduct of submitting to heaven's rule, then you're going to, like Paul said in 1 Corinthians 9, also become all things to all men within law. And so you're not going to just be different for the sake of different, but different because Christ is setting you apart. You're not setting submitting to him, he's doing that work by his word.
It's a really good point. Yeah.
A good biblical example of somebody that was different was Daniel in the book of Daniel, where he was going to serve God no matter what, and started off very young, where he was not going to participate in the king's dainties and eat things that were a Jew could not eat, and as he got older, the same thing. And we're as Christians supposed to let our light shine. Well, he obviously did, because they finally figured that's the only way they could get to him was to do something concerning his God, because they knew that he worshiped God, and they knew he prayed, and they knew all that. So, because he was definitely different.
Yeah. Yeah, and we know, the only way that they were going to be able to trap Daniel in some type of wrongdoing was to try to make a law in which would prohibit him to do what he knew what was right in praying, and he stood fast. One of the things that I meant to bring up is in this first verse of our first sentence of our lesson, it says, becoming a disciple of Christ is very exciting. I know that most of us here, not all of us maybe, but a lot of us here have been Christians for some time. Obeyed the gospel maybe when we were young, or whatever it may be, but have some years of this life under our belt. But if you can think back upon the time that you did obey the gospel, in which you first learned it and were obedient to it, do you think that there's a difference? And I guess I don't need to ask this for somebody to give me a personal example unless you just want to. But the way that you viewed the world immediately after, or following that, or before that, right before you obeyed, compared to now. And the only reason I ask that, I guess from personal experience, there's a certain degree of, I guess, comfort that I have, at times kind of gotten away from that passion and that excitement that I had when I once obeyed. And I think that it is, especially where we live in this country, with the blessings that we have, it's very easy to do. We're blessed with so many things, and we're all so busy. I mean, everybody here probably could show me their calendar of all the things that they have scheduled for the rest of this year, and it's February, of different things that you have planned, whether it be trips or different things. And all of those things, maybe in and of itself, aren't necessarily bad, but they can distract us from, what we should be doing as Christians. And I know that whether we talk about these things, I don't think I need to preface this over and over again with you guys, but, these things in and of themselves may not be bad. I'll just say that. However, these things can be very are harmful to our walk as a Christian. And when any one thing can become a deterrent, the devil's going to use that, whatever it is. Maybe it's something as wonderful as family, or our jobs, or whatever it is that we think that we're doing that is proper, can cause us to slowly slip away from being as diligent as we should. We may not sin in the sense of, somebody that's continuing in worldliness or wickedness in one way or the other. But I don't think that I have to tell anyone here that if the devil can find any avenue, any weakness, he will take it and he will capitalize on it, and he will do whatever he can to bring you down. And whatever that might be, and it may be something that started off very innocent, but it's kind of taken over. So that excitement that we once had, and we've talked about this before, whether it be in lessons or maybe sermons we've heard, but that passion that we had, we have to find a way to get back to it. And whatever that may be, and I don't know, I can't say for everybody this is what you have to do. I think for everybody it's a little bit different. But it really just comes back to this. However it happens, it has to come back to this. Because you may find different avenues. Somebody may be enjoy sitting down with the actual Bible. Somebody may like to listen to it better. Somebody may find their strengths in other ways, whether it be visiting people or things like that, to try to reinvigorate that passion that we once had. Does anybody have any comments or questions on that? Yeah.
So, two things that come to my mind when you talk about that is, one is something teaching our children is that while it may be legal, it may not be right. And I think that was to Jeremiah's thought about that with the scripture. And I think that Satan's using that. It's legal, so it's okay. Well, no. Just because it's legal does not mean that it's right. And so being able to go to God's word for that. The second thought that I continue to think about is we had the opportunity to visit with Lydia today, and Lydia was talking about temptation, and pretty much asked the question: do we understand how challenging temptations are in high school? And I started kind of giggling, and I see you guys giggling too, and I'm like, yes, and I said, there's not a single place that you can go in the world where there's not temptation. It's going to be there. And so I think it's important, as you were talking about and thinking about some scripture and some of the New Testament, even in Titus, about the importance of keeping zeal and vigor on this pilgrimage that we're on together.
Absolutely. Yeah, DJ?
The strangers and pilgrims, the thing that I like the most about this point that kind of you're getting at is what's exciting is what keeps us excited, or what keeps me excited is focusing on that spiritual home, because then as a stranger, we're living different, and they don't understand why we're living different, right? Then the pilgrim is we're here, and we have something to offer them that they don't know. Kind of like the pilgrims back then, they taught them new things. Where as strangers and pilgrims in this foreign land, we have something to offer these people. And if we're looking at it from that spiritual lens, it's exciting because you get to see all the opportunities. And so it's not necessarily, we're not strangers and pilgrims like, when you go to New York City, you don't really want to see the cool things. We're there trying to influence these people of God's ways. And often I have to remind myself in my conversations that that's the soul, and we have something to offer them. It is Christ's word, but that's why I kind of like the pilgrim word.
Yeah. Anybody else? Yep.
I kind of agree with what you were alluding to. Is I know when I first obeyed the gospel, as most here, you first do that sincerity. It doesn't take but a short period of time where you're no longer comfortable around worldly people, and you slowly but surely you start ridding yourself of all of that, and you get rid of them. And the biggest battle now that I face, and I get really bad at it, is getting stagnant, where you're going along, you're just going your daily life, living it, but less and less you're not as focused on growing in the knowledge of Christ as you were when you first started. So the battle is to not be stagnant, and that's always what I have a rough time with. But and I'm still not comfortable anymore around worldly people. I really don't, I really am not comfortable. So as far as that, I get that. Psalms 119, verse 19 is a good verse. I'm a stranger on the earth. Do not hide your commandments from me. You're more comfortable when you're working in the Word of God anymore as a Christian. So, but it's a difficult thing to stay away from that slackness that you get into.
Right, when the enthusiasm, getting that enthusiasm lit up. Remember when I was running a lot, marathons and half marathons, there was days I did not want to go out there and run. My wife, being the nice person that she is, said, you always got to for me, when I'm on my low points spiritually, that's when I got to pick up my Bible, read my Bible, contact Jeremiah, contact you, whoever I need to contact to get myself regenerated, move on, so I can't go out in the world. Even I agree, I don't like going out in the world, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and I think, kind of like what James said, I remember, I guess, at certain points in my life where I was maybe hanging out with too many worldly people and realized that was wrong and I was making things right. I thought before I did that, it was going to be very difficult to give up all of these friends, people that I had, become fairly close to. And when I changed and realized that, they were bringing me down in so many ways, it was a lot easier than I expected to give those people up. And I thought that I was going to miss them, but when I saw how damaging it was to my walk as a Christian, it really wasn't that hard. And I think that, over and over again, God is trying to tell us in His Word, I can help you if you will let me. Because there are so many times, and I don't know if Jeremiah brought this up in a lesson or where I heard it. I'll give him credit. But, sometimes we talk about wanting growth, but yet we feel like we need to get to a certain degree before we start opening the Bible because we know what we need to do. And what God is saying is that if you immerse yourself in my scriptures, that growth will come. We talk about these habits of trying to read the scriptures and study more. Well, sometimes maybe that's where you just need to start. And any of us, and I would say that all of us who have at any point in our life been down or been stressed out about things in the world, when you read the Word of God, even if it's not even you could read a story about an Old Testament character, there is something in it that just gives you that kind of calm, that peace of mind. And it's because you know that the power is there. But going to what James said, I have always felt that one of the most useful tricks of the devil is to cause apathy among Christians, especially those that have been Christians for a certain period of time, for any length of time, in which they feel fairly comfortable in the things that they know. If they were approached by anybody at any point about how to be saved, or maybe certain aspects of the church, or things about Christ or God, things about maybe even more in-depth things, they'd be able to at least bring those scriptures up. And so there's a certain degree of confidence and maybe assurance that we have, and so we stop reading, we stop thriving, stop trying to grow. And I think that is usually, when the devil tries to find a way in. And it may be something like we talked about earlier, something innocent. If he can just distract you in some way and bring you down, or distract you in some way and at least make it to where this isn't as much of a priority. It's still a priority. It's still on the back burner. But this right now is a priority in your life. And whatever it is, it's going to pass, and there's going to be something else. Anybody that's had parents that have had children, when they're young, that's your focus. And as they get older, there's something else. Now they're out of the house, and you have other things that you're focusing on, or whatever it is. So we need to remember that. I mean, obviously, the devil is very good at what he does. And, kind of going to Aaron's point, there's temptations at all ages. And although temptation in and of itself isn't necessarily sinful, if we succumb to that temptation, I've heard people say sometimes that being tempted is evil. And that can't be, because we know Christ was tempted. But just because someone is tempted to do something doesn't make them a sinner. It's how they approach that temptation, what they decide to do when they are tempted, that can determine whether or not they're, falling away. Does anybody have? Yeah.
So because our citizenship is in heaven, right, and we're strangers in this land, I think there's a mindset ourselves, in a foreign country where Americans are not welcome, and you're in great danger if you put yourself out there, in an open area where you make yourself vulnerable to them. So you are not welcome there. So if you put yourself out there, they'll kill you. All right. So because you are not welcome there, and so as Christians, if we have that mindset in this on this earth, that around all the worldliness, we make ourselves not welcome around that stuff. Because if we try to make ourselves welcome around all this worldly stuff that goes on around us, we are inviting that death, except not physically, but spiritually.
Yeah, it's a really good point. And it has a lot to do with how we view ourselves in this world and how others view us. I think one of the best sentences or points that the author makes in this, and it's in the side note over here, is we are strangers in this world because we are strangers to the world. And it has a lot to do with when you are living the way that you know that you're supposed to be living, there is going to be a difference in the way that people see you. It's going to be apparent, and I think it talks about in Peter that the answer to the defense, there should be, or defense to the answer, or what is it? I'm messing that up. I don't have it in my notes. Answer, be ready. Somebody? Okay, there you go. So we need to be ready. But there's an aspect of our lives in which I think that we notice this sometimes, especially when we are at our strongest spiritually, as strong as we can be at that time, that we will see a difference in the way that people act around us. I think most of us here probably have had an experience in which they know that we are Christians, and so they, even out of kindness, they abstain from doing certain things in our presence. There's a deeper issue there than just doing it in our presence, although we appreciate that, and I think that that's good. But the point is, it can't just end there and just say, don't do it around me. The point has to be to where we try to explore that further with that person and say, well, why do you do that? Or, I'd like to discuss that with you. Yeah.
Sorry.
No, you're...
To that point, that means you're doing something, you're living evidently to Christ the way they know.
Right.
And yeah, and like you said, we shouldn't be satisfied with that, but at the same time, if that's not happening, you might want to see if you're being a stranger.
Yeah. And you've heard it before that if the people that you are around all the time, if they found out that you were a Christian, would they be surprised? Is it something that they'd be like, really? I didn't see that. I mean, I thought that they were morally a good person, but what do you mean a Christian? What makes them, because, and I'm not saying necessarily sinful. I'm talking about things that we discuss, things that are important to us. It can be something as minor, and in the world that we live in today, that's one of the things that I've thought about is, as wicked as the world is getting, it doesn't even take as much as I think it used to for Christians to stand out. Our opportunities that we have of discussing these things or being spiritually minded around people is fairly apparent. I know where we live, and I'm thankful to live in this state. I think that there's a lot of benefits to living here. But, if you've, like we talked about, if you've ever traveled or went somewhere, there are some places even within the United States that are mind-boggling of the wickedness that they accept. And we see this all the time on the news and things like that. But what are we doing about it? We can't just go and try to keep our head buried in the sand and try to get through it, because we won't be able to. We'll be overcome. We have to try to spread the gospel, because that, in anybody that has ever done it, I'm sure you have, when you're preparing to try to study with someone who's lost, you'll grow so much more than you probably ever expected. when you're trying to prepare to teach someone the truth, oftentimes you'll discover some things for yourself. And I think that that's another, attribute towards the power of God. The first thing that it brings... Well, luckily, see, Jeremiah only spent 1 week, one class period last time, so I get 3. That's what I told him, and he said, I don't think so. But I think we can get through these. A lot of these things that are kind of redundant to what we've discussed. The first point that it brings up is disciples have been called out of this world and made citizens of a heavenly kingdom. Somebody turned to Colossians 1:13 and somebody else turned to Philippians 3:20. And whoever gets to Colossians 1:13, if you'll read that.
He has delivered us from the power of darkness and conveyed us into the kingdom of the Son of His love.
And then Philippians 3:20. I'm going to...
Our citizenship is in heaven, from which we also eagerly wait for the Savior, the Lord Jesus Christ.
Thank you. Thank you, DJ, not Colby. Our disciples, or our citizenship is in heaven, like kind of what Aaron was talking about. And it has to do with our mindset and our view of how we interact with this world. One of the difficult things that I think we all face is forgetting about heaven. I mean, we know it's there, and we think about it from time to time, but in our daily lives, with all the worries, all the stress, all the things that we forget about that. And what God is trying to tell us is, listen, this is so temporary. This life and all of the worries and cares of this world are so temporary. You have to keep your eye on heaven. You have to keep your viewpoint on where we're going to go. Second point is disciples are following one whom the world has rejected. John 15:18 through 21. Somebody turn there and read that. Maybe somebody hasn't read yet. Colby, you're still in that. I mean, I know you said a few words, but if you want to do it, you can do it.
All right. If the world hates you, know that it has hated me before it hated you. If you were of the world would love you as its own. But because you are not of the world, but I chose you out of the world, therefore the world hates you. Remember the word that I said to you, a servant is not greater than his master. If they persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they kept my word, they will also keep yours. But all these things they will do to you on account of my name, because they do not know him who sent me.
All right, so question 5 in your book. What kind of treatment does Jesus say his disciples could expect from the world, and why? That we would be hated, that we would be rejected. And I think that, we should expect this because this is exactly what happened to Christ. Yeah.
If somebody's sitting in the audience and thinks this lesson is a little extreme, pull up clips of the Grammys this weekend and some of the things that people are saying about conservatives that don't approve of some of the things that are being said.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't, of course, watch it, but heard about it and pulled up. Didn't click on anything, but there's people wearing horns and fire everywhere, and then the articles about it are, conservatives or this, and it's just crazy. And 5 minutes after our conversation about that during dinner, me and Lori, I picked up this lesson right here and started studying Monday, and I'm like, wow. It really hit home.
Yeah, I've seen some of the things about, I don't even know where to start. And honestly, I don't really even, I don't know. It just, what they even consider conservative is far-fetched, many times. But yeah, there's certainly some wickedness, in this world. for sure.
I think there's even more of a nuance to that with Jesus, because he was a Jew among the Jews, and the Jews hated him. And so, I mean, I think sometimes we can be really broad with the world, and the world includes, or maybe narrow with the world, but the world includes all the other people that think they're Christians and they're not Christians. And sometimes the greatest hatred we receive from them, because they think we're in the same boat. We contradict what they're saying, and we have scripture behind it as the foundation, and that doesn't sit well with people. We've got to accept that kind of reality as well.
Yeah, it's a really good point. All right, we'll end there, and we'll take up there on Sunday, Lord willing. Appreciate your comments and